Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It. Your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, feeling better than ever. My friend, Vasili Gianarakos. Welcome back, buddy. How you doing?
Oh man, it's great to be back. We're back in full force finally. It's felt like forever, but
Yup.
I'm excited. Just the fact that I'm feeling better in general. Like I just had probably one of the worst colds I've ever had in my entire life. Like I was sick probably 2 Sundays ago, and now I was just feeling better starting out this week. So it's good to be back to full strength here. We're back on we're not shorthanded anymore, so
Yup.
we're good to go. And, great weekend for sports, obviously, because Flyers back-to-back games, despite not getting the results they want, still very competitive in these games. And then Super Bowl, you obviously got the Eagles versus the Chiefs, so that's going to be great later tonight. And, I mean, obviously for me, I got to put a prediction in there. I'm saying, 30-17 Eagles. I think we got a first touchdown, AJ Brown. So I'm feeling it, guys. We're fired up for this one.
30-17. I like how specific that is.
Mhm.
I personally, I'm not good at predicting scores, but I will say the vibe totally is that Philly's going to win this, at
I
least for
agree.
me. But we'll see. I'm no expert on football. I'm far from it.
Neither am I, but I'll throw a prediction out just
To
just for
be,
fun,
to be honest with you, it's more of just my belief in Hurts as a
Oh,
quarterback.
he's very talented, very
He
very talented.
he is, and he just doesn't seem phased by much, and he's just kind of a physical specimen. And
Just
when
the
you see,
throwing running combo,
well,
man.
like
It's
I
crazy.
really like Donovan McNabb, but you think about Donovan McNabb, he's like throwing up in between, plays. Like I don't see Hurts doing any of that stuff.
No,
I, he's just kind of a savage. He's more like machine like, and I like that in an athlete. You know what
he's
I mean?
ready to
Yeah,
rock, man.
yeah. So yeah, go Eagles. And
Go
it's
Birds.
crazy. We're literally recording this like right before the Eagles game, which is
Yeah, I know, which is pretty funny.
right after the Kraken game, right into the Eagles.
So it's kind of like a pseudo post game in a sense here.
Yeah, pseudo post game and fake Eagles pregame. A very
Yeah.
bad one. Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. Actually, real quick, shout out to Jim Stakes. I haven't been doing the ads much, but we'll be back. From what I understand, they're still not back in business, and I'm out of the country right now. So, but we'll get them back in here. So shout out to
Get
Jim Stakes.
get some cheesesteaks going
Yeah,
for
get
sure.
yourself some cheesesteaks. All right. Let's get into it, dude. We got a lot of good stuff to talk about. We got three interesting games in a row. We had the Oilers game where the Flyers disappointed essentially, maybe the hottest team in the league at the time, at least offensively. Connor McDavid obviously is insane. Draisaitl is a spectacular player.
Even
Uh,
Kane, man, was flying in that game.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the team has talent now. This is not the Oilers of the past that didn't have enough firepower beyond McDavid. That's not the case anymore. They're still missing some key elements, but they're obviously a good team now. They're entering that regularly competitive rate. Now they might be scary, right? There's a rumor out there for Carlson with them. That would be a
Yeah.
really interesting move. High power offense.
Lethal power. Think
Yeah.
about the power play. We were even
It-
talking just
dude,
off air. McDavid, Draisaitl, Carlson, Kane, Nugent Hopkins, first unit.
I
Insane.
just I just see the combination of Carlson and McDavid even. Just
Oh
the
yeah,
the immense speed that you could attack a team.
puck movement.
Yeah. Look, play to your strengths in that case. But Flyers, come in and defeat them in overtime, then lose a game to Nashville, another nail biter. And then just getting done here, Flyers lose another close one here in a game that, on the scoreboard was close, but they didn't. Yeah, I wouldn't say they played poorly. Like if you look at it overall, the Flyers kind of maintained the entire game. They never let the game get out of control. And it showed in the scoreboard. But another game where they were kind of out of it, and the scoring is just kind of drying up a little bit. The offensive opportunities, and maybe that's a combination of fatigue. They did play a lot of hockey of late, but also just kind of how their team is built and the limitations that they do have. But an interesting stretch overall. And Vasili, what'd you think, man?
Yeah, so just for the past three games, obviously we could start off with the Oilers one, and I mean, out of the three, that's the one they get the result they're looking for with the shootout win. And in that one, I just thought in particular, it was impressive to see the Flyers slow the speed of the Oilers down because they're such a fast team. And the Flyers aren't necessarily the fastest. They do have some burners like Tippett, Frost pretty quick, Konechny as well. But I mean, they don't have anybody to the likes of McDavid or on the level of Draisaitl really. So for them to slow them down the neutral zone and just keep them to the perimeter with a lot of their chances was impressive for me.
Yep.
Mainly, I mean, I thought Provorov and York standout games for both of those guys. York has a great play on McDavid and slows him down in a one-on-one matchup where McDavid kind of is trying to run in and he's trying to put the puck in between the little triangle between the stick and the hands that the player would have. So he does it twice on York, but York still stays with him, which is really impressive stuff. Obviously, Carter Hart against his hometown team has a huge showing in that game as well. And then I thought Morgan Frost in these last three games, even tonight against Seattle, I thought he's been really good. And in that Oilers game specifically, just showing his hands and just his dangling ability. And then slick move for the shootout winning goal there as well. So overall, hard fought, win against the Oilers. What did you think about that Oilers game, Yariv?
No, I think that was really well stated. I was thinking about it as you were talking about Carter Hart. I know we have a segment to talk about him later, but I don't think people realize that he is our star player. It's just like weird in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
It's weird in Philly to like even think of that. Like our goaltender has been such a weakness on our team, or just like an average point of our team for so long. But he is a star player. I know the numbers don't reflect that too, but it's obvious. Like he can control games as a player. He can steal games on a regular basis. He's exceptional, and I think the Flyers played to their strengths. I think the reason the Flyers are winning is that they're playing to their strength, which is play around your goaltender. You have a decent six here on D. You have enough physical element and like two-way guys to scramble. And you can see the teams that the Flyers struggle against the most, and I think we saw that with the Kraken, are teams that know how to grind. Teams that can grind a playoff type game. That's who we struggle against. Teams like Edmonton, which is a pure speed team, you always notice the Flyers seem to match up against these guys because they just keep it simple. They try to keep them to the outside. They play physical on them. And, it shows, again, we were talking about Edmonton's weakness. That's probably where it is right now. They probably would love like a Scott Lawton in their lineup or whatnot.
And also the discipline too. Forgot to mention that, but they didn't take any penalties against the Oilers. I think that was a key for them.
I don't think they took. Did they take one against the Kraken? Oh yeah, they did at the end.
Yeah, they took some against the Kraken, and then they took one against Nashville. But overall, these last three, they haven't really been taking too many penalties.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, that's going to help you out just with the discipline factor. And I mean, you put McDavid and Draisaitl on the power play a bunch of times. I don't think that's really a recipe for success. It doesn't matter how good you're playing in your defensive structure, as the Flyers were. And I mean, for the Nashville game, it's pretty similar, to be honest. Like the recipe that the Flyers were kind of looking for and playing with in the Nashville game, I thought was very similar to Edmonton. In a sense, I mean, there's obviously a lot more fighting and physicality going on in that Nashville game. Huge hit by Ristolainen on Forsberg, and you hate to see that with Forsberg, getting hurt, hitting his head on the ice like that. Scary play, but was a clean hit. So I know that kind of sparks a lot of physicality. Obviously, Delorier fighting Jeannot. You get Farabee fighting, which is interesting. But sneaky tough is what John Tortorella did to describe him in the presser after the game there, which is, I would say, is pretty accurate. But overall, that Nashville game, I thought they kept them to the perimeter. Nashville had a lot of shots from the outside. The Flyers had 30 block shots, so they're just staying in their structure. That's a John Tortorella team, blocking shots, keeping a team to the outside, which they did do. And then, I mean, Kevin Hayes, once again, coming up big for them offensively. I mean, he's kind of been the motor on offense the last 10 or so games since they've gotten back from the All-Star break. He scores in that Edmonton game, scores again in that Nashville game. Gets to OT, but unfortunately, I mean, is a quick one to end there. Duchesne gets it in through the 5-hole. Hart, I mean, one he would like back. It was kind of a weird shot, though. I saw as a goaltender, like the way it came in, it kind of hits like the edge of his pad. So if it's like the triangle of his 5-hole, it hits right under the edge there, and that's like super, super hard to save because it's just wobbling into the edge. It's not like in the middle where you can stop it with your stick and kind of close out the 5-hole. So Hart even says himself after the game, let's one it through my 5-hole. I can't let a goal in through my 5-hole. Most goalies are going to say that. So it's a tough one, but I thought Hart played a good game overall. I thought the team played well overall. It's just like the overtime kills them. And I mean, I think they're 1-9 in the 3-on-3 now, and just crazy to think because they're about like I think 6 or 7 points back from the playoffs. But imagine if that 1-9 is a 9-1 hypothetically, or like
Yeah.
even a 5-5 or 4-5, right?
I think it shows their shortcomings as a team. I do think having Couturier and Atkinson, I do think that maybe they win a couple more there in overtime.
Yeah,
It's
for
the
sure.
element that they're missing. They're missing that puck possession. Morgan Frost is obviously showing more and more that he can be that guy, though. A 40-point pace doesn't necessarily make you that guy. They still don't really have that. Like Tippett has flashes of it. Obviously, TK is dried up, but he's had flashes of kind of carrying the play. Hayes has moments of it, but we really don't
Yeah,
have that guy anymore. We don't have the Voracek and Giroux,
yeah,
on each line that can, you can put them together, you can separate them, and you can, like, I think people forget because it's been that those guys gave defenses such a tough time. They scored every night, one of
yeah.
the two of them.
And it is hard in 3-on-3 too, right? Like they don't have that bona fide number one de facto center, and I think it's tough when you're going up against these teams in overtime that have a McDavid or they have Johansson and Duchesne they can plug in at center, and you're not really being able to match up
I
against them.
mean, we're at a point
It
where we play two defensemen because of that problem.
yeah, exactly, right. So like it's obviously something that the coaching staff and the team is recognizing, but I think it shows the fact that the Flyers are really close in these games, the fact they're getting to overtime, and they are kind of that one piece away from maybe being, able to win some of these games, and then it's a whole different conversation in terms of this season and where they're at, right? Because 5, 6 more points, you're right in the bubble, and you never know what's going to happen. Let's say you get in the first round with a Tortorella coach team and a goalie like Hart, like anything's really possible, I would say, in that circumstance. So it's definitely interesting just from an injury perspective. Like you were saying, you get Atkinson, Couturier in there, what could be, or even if you just have like a bona fide number one center. And it kind of speaks to some of the wingers drying up offensively, like a Konechny. Like,
Yeah.
how does that impact him not being able to play with a bona fide number one guy? Imagine if he has a Sean Couturier with him, or somebody to that level. Is he scoring even more? Is it
We
is it easy? Is it easier for him to break out of this slump that
we
he's in? You know?
I mean, realistically, just because the assets even in those positions are young, never proven to be on those paces. They're both on a 30 and a 40-point pace,
Yeah,
about 35, 40-point pace for both those guys. They're on paper not top six forwards, and Scott Lawton has never been a top six forward. The guy who's supposed to be that, Kevin Hayes, is now playing left wing.
yeah.
Flyers still don't even have a top six forward to rely on down the middle from a veteran stance. Like
Yeah,
they used to have a Couturier and Giroux no matter
Giroux.
what, and then we had Hayes. We had a Nolan Patrick who we thought was up and coming. We could always slot
But that's
Scott
a much
Lawton
better
in.
situation, obviously, than what they're in now, I would say.
Right. And it's like, it's actually not as horrible. It's more of like, for this year, yes. But as
Yeah,
far as it's something to build on, yeah, you're missing that Couturier. Obviously, there's one of your top six forwards, right? And
yeah.
then you still need
You're
another one
hoping
that
to one
maybe
of
it's
those.
Frost.
Yeah, you're
Maybe it's
hoping one of these guys can progress,
Yeah,
obviously.
maybe it's Frost. It's obviously Cates on the defensive side, and it might be Frost on the offensive side. So like
Yeah,
we don't know. Like we don't know. Ideally, you would love to see Noah Cates as your third line center right now. That's like
exactly. But he's more in like
golden
a
spot for him.
first line, second line role, which I mean is holding them back in certain times, like we're saying offensively.
Yeah.
And then just to jump in, obviously this last game, the Kraken game, they lose 4-3 here. I mean, this one we just saw and kind of saw what unfolded here. And another tough one just on a back to back for Sandstrom. You kind of got a feel for him because I just feel like he's put in these situations where, especially a back to back matinee game. You could tell the Flyers don't really have their legs
I
under them.
mean,
They start off with the early goal, but from there, in both periods, the Kraken kind of just control a lot of the play. I would say. What would you
I
think,
mean,
Yariv, out of this one?
you got to figure the coaching staff knows this, right?
Oh, of course,
And
yeah.
like, I can't believe that they're not. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. But I can't believe that the coaching staff is not like, to some degree, like understanding that they're putting this guy in a tough position. And
Yeah, of
I'd
course.
really like to see, like, right now Sandstrom, he's still third string. He is where he is because of contract reasons, but you are third string. You've been outperformed by Airson this year, which is fine, but it's okay for him to go through this, I think. And I don't think the Flyers should necessarily give up on him. at this age. I think he's a tough position to be in, but if he can get through it, he could be a better goalie because of it, just because he's already
Yeah.
been through the grind and it hasn't been easy for him to come in the league. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of interested to see how it turns out because I don't think they're like purposefully like being like, oh, we're gonna throw him in here. He's gonna get shelled tonight. I think they're
No, I
like,
don't think
hey, we
so.
know it's a tough game, but the team should show up, and they didn't have the gas tonight. But
Yeah.
he also didn't play a perfect game. I wouldn't say that it's not his fault, but he's also not stealing games at all. So I think it's kind of up on him to also maybe elevate his game a little bit. Even though he makes some good saves, it's just like maybe they need a couple steals
He
because then
needs that. He needs that big save, like on one of those Schwartz
he just
goals,
needs a big game.
ideally. Yeah,
You
on
know,
one of those Schwartz goals that they let in, right? Like it's a couple missed coverages on those Schwartz goals, and essentially, I mean, he's it. He those are saves that could be made. Obviously, they are not. I think that's
yeah,
what kind of kills them. Whereas, like Hart in those situations, typically is making
probably
those
makes
saves.
one of the two golden
Exactly, and then
opportunities. Yeah,
it could be a tie game at that point, right?
yeah,
So that's really the difference maker. Not to say like Sancho's playing bad, but
but
it
he's
is
not a
true
difference
that
maker.
yeah, he's not making
This is
that
what
big
we were talking
save.
about with Hart. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
Exactly.
this is what we were talking about with Hart. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's not making that big save, really, right?
Yeah.
That Hart is technically doing, and I thought it was interesting. I mean, that Tippett, JVR, and Frost line gets put back together, and they probably are the best line for them in this one, buzzing the most. Frost with some chances, Tippett with some good plays, JVR as well. They're doing some good work, just kind of entering the zone off the rush, also down low. So I think that was
Hmm.
kind of the highlight offensively for the Flyers in this one. Um, it was interesting too to see Ristolainen get put on the power play as the net front guy. I thought that was something we haven't really seen so much this season, but it, obviously helps me get the power play goal, and he's going to be a tough guy to box out in front. So I see where they're coming from, and he's been pretty good lately, making passes from behind the net. So I understand it, and I think it's probably something they'll go back to. We'll see the next game just because they had success with it. Just to mention, I mean, for this game. Tippett gets a goal and an assist, 15th of the year, so he's on pace.
Real quick, just to touch on
Yeah.
that Risto thing, I don't think see, it's not that I like hate it, but when I see that, I'm like, okay, that's like in your back pocket. You're not actually going to go with that as a power play unit throughout the year.
No,
That's the
but
only reason I
they'll
don't
try
like
it
it.
sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like it's a sign that your power play is just not working.
No, it isn't working. It hasn't been good all year.
Yeah,
They need an overhaul, obviously.
that's why it bothers me. Not that it bothers me to see them try it. It's just like, man, dude, we're still dealing with this with the
We're
power play.
throwing darts at the board. That's
Exactly.
really
Yeah.
what it is,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like, you know what, Risto he's been put in that position. Let's try him. That's essentially what it is, right?
Yeah. Like
But
I get it, but I also am like, no, that you have enough guy. Like there has to be something going on here. I mean,
personally, I
go ahead.
mean, personally, I would do Frost on the one side, Tippett on the one side. I put Konechny there. I put Lawton or Cates in the front, and then have York. That would be my unit just to try for the rest of the year. Just let them try to work something out. I mean, at least Tippett and York and Frost and Konechny, they're going to be here next year and on the power play for sure. So might as well let them figure something out together. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a problem, obviously. But yeah, I was just going to go through a little bit of the stats for that game. So I
Sure.
mean, Tippett, 15th of the season, has an assist as well. So he's on pace for 20 goals, which is impressive, and it's something we kind of predicted. At the start of the year, which is it's not too surprising that he's there just with his shot and skill.
Mm-hmm.
JVR, ninth of the season, and hasn't played a lot of games. Had that injury, so that's pretty impressive on his end. And I mean, Ristolainen, two assists. So good game from him. Overall, Flyers just in this one, I think just lacked gas. They made it interesting at the end, but it was clear that Seattle was on top of them just in terms of like the chances against. Um,
They had
they
more
had more,
energy.
yeah,
They had
more
more energy.
energy, more shots on goal, more zone time. So it
Yeah.
just looked like the Flyers were a bit worn down in this one. But you know what? It's something that you got to give them credit, right? They keep the game close. They're in one goal games constantly, right? Like the last three games are one goal games. That game against the Islanders is a one goal game. Like people can, be displeased that they're getting into these overtime losses or picking up these points. But last year, everybody was saying there's no effort. This team's getting blown out on a regular basis. It's the complete opposite this season. Like they're in these games. They're very close. I'd say it's a great thing for a lot of their younger guys just to be in these experiences, in these close games this time of year, because this is where the games really start to matter for a lot of these teams that are fighting for a playoff position. So
Yeah. I think this is, and we're gonna get in trade deadline talk, but I'm not gonna lie, I do see people's point where I'm like, okay, I am happy about this, but I also like now I want to see JVR removed. I
I
want to
agree.
see
Yeah.
more veterans removed, not because I want the team to suffer, but because I'm like, okay, we know we need the assets, and I'm okay losing extra games this
Yeah.
season. It's only going to help us in a draft position. And if they don't, it's because some other young guy stepped up
Which
again.
is a positive,
It's
exactly.
it's only a
So it's
win
a
from there.
win-win such
Yeah.
situation, pretty
And if you
much.
don't have the guy, then it won't happen and the team will stagnate a little bit. And okay, you'll be in a better draft pick position. It won't
Yeah.
really change
And I
your
mean,
outcome.
we're getting into that territory now, right? You're seeing guys getting traded like a Tarasenko. There's rumblings with the
Yeah.
Chitrin. So like it's starting to
Apparently
be
he's
that
traded
time of the year.
already. He's already
Chitrin? Oh, damn.
well,
Okay. Is
he's
that like
benched.
breaking news? Yeah, yeah, he got scratched. So apparently it's close or something, imminent. They were saying LA Kings potentially, but then the Kings denied that they were involved. But it might have been because they had that Dustin Brown.
What if it's the
Uh,
Devils?
That'd be interesting. I just don't know like how the Devils would be able to afford it because they got to re-sign Bratt and then they'll have to re-sign him and they have already Hamilton. So they'll at least they'll have to work some cap magic. I could see maybe I don't know. There's some teams that I think they were saying Boston potentially, but also they have cap
Oof.
issues. So
Can you
we'll
imagine?
see.
No, I think Kings does make sense, but it'd have to be like a team.
But I feel it's going the other way in that sense. I would say I
Yeah,
don't know if they want to give up on him, but
I think it's a team with a glaring weakness on the back end.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like you're obviously missing that guy or a top pairing
they
guy.
need somebody to play with Doughty, really, right?
Yeah, and that's the Kings in that case. It's kind of hard to think of. Like, are there other teams that are really in that
I
situation?
think, I mean, yeah, I think Boston was one rumored.
Oh, because McAvoy.
Well, no, he's in, but I think they just want to add some more, as much as they can, really there because this might be one of their last kicks that they can, which arguably is pretty understandable just looking at the age of the
But
roster.
he's expensive.
Yeah, yeah,
He's really
yeah.
expensive.
I mean, they're gonna eat some money most likely, so
I don't
I
mean
think.
money wise, but the trade itself would
Oh
be.
yeah, it's going to be asset wise. You're giving up a lot. I think they're looking for like first round pick, high end prospect, probably another second thrown in as well.
Think about what
So
we would ask for Provorov, dude. There's no way that they would
it's
ask for anything.
very similar return. I'd say
What
both young guys, right?
what if it's what I think it would be a team that's kind of out of the conversation as far as championship, and they want to
Yeah,
elevate themselves into the conversation by adding a Chikrin. That's why LA is probably rumored.
which makes sense. Yeah, LA definitely makes sense there.
Yeah. So speaking of defensemen, let's get into our next topic. Um, let's talk about Tony DeAngelo. So as of late, I guess we'll state it this way that Tortorella kind of alluded to the fact that Tony DeAngelo has not played the best defensively, and they were kind of surprised. He also said that he felt that they put a lot on him. They were using him a ton in the beginning of the season, and for long stretches it worked. But then you notice he kind of degraded. And it seems like it's kind of been like a progress to try to get his defensive game kind of where it needs to be. Now, I see people freaking out about this like it's some kind of revelation or like they haven't had this conversation one on one the entire season. But I go back to the same goddamn point that I made in preseason that we talked about Vasili, and I swear to God, I don't know what people are talking about. Find me defensemen or offensive defensemen that are good at defense. Please. I would
Yeah,
love to
other
see them.
than a few very elite ones, and even Eric Carlson, who's like leading the league. If you look at his analytics defensively, they're
He's
fucking
not
terrible.
great. He's
Yeah,
just
they're not. But he scores
exceptional
so much. Yeah, he
offensively.
scores so
He,
much. It offsets that
it's the
fact, right?
transition game. Again, these are not two-way defensemen. A guy like York, a guy like Provorov, a guy like Sanheim, guys who have offensive ability, but obviously they make even a guy like Risto is kind of proving to have that offensive game again. But like these guys are more two-way. They have
Yeah,
a different mindset. But an offensive defenseman, it's just like there's just not many that can play defensively responsible. Okay, Roman Yossi. Okay, Norris winner. Like I get it, but that's why they're like the best in their class, they don't have a flaw, as far as they can play both ends of the ice. And I don't know, Vasili. Like, to me, I don't really care about this comment. My feelings on D'Angelo have not changed at all.
Yeah.
My feelings towards trading him have not changed. I was open to trading him in the beginning of the season. I'm still open to trading him now. I'm open to keeping him, and I'm open to trading him next year. And I'm probably, pushing more towards that for next year.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a storyline, right? Obviously, because you have a coach calling a player a defensive liability, of course, it's going to make some noise. So just to preface kind of the comments here, Tortorella, he didn't just shit on him. He also said he's done a lot of good things too, but
Yeah,
that seems to get lost in the conversation
it's like
here. So
buried in the story.
yeah. So anyway, so Tortorella, he says himself, like, he's done some great things this season, but in terms of his defense, he said we want to try to help him more there. We feel he needs to get better defensively without taking away any of the great offensive ability he has, and that's the tough situation, right? It's like how to balance. Okay, we need to
Yeah.
put him in situations to succeed offensively. We also need to help him defensively. So it's a hard, world to live in as a coach when you have a player like this, because it can be tough to balance, obviously, because you want to put him out for those offensive starts, but sometimes he can get caught in his own end. But essentially, he added, the defensive liability is something we have to work on. He didn't call him a defensive liability per se. He just said the liabilities in his game is something we need to work on. Which, I mean, Tortorella hasn't, been somebody to sugarcoat anything this season so far. He said, we're going to keep working as a team, and this is obviously something that they want to keep working on with D'Angelo, which makes sense because he's never been a defensive stalwart. I'm sure any coach that he's played under has always reminded him, and has it's been something in his game that they've kind of tried to work on with him. So I don't think it's any surprise, as you were kind of saying. Like, it's been something that has been known about him as a player for a while now. Just in terms of, him getting traded and all that, I think that's where the interest comes in here for these comments, because maybe the team's kind of looking at it in the sense where, maybe he's not much of a fit here. But also there's one way to look at it and another side as well. Like, he does have 31 points in 49 games. He's the highest scoring offensive defenseman on the team. Despite that fact, he's minus 16 this season, which shows, I mean, there is some defensive problems there, but he has 122 shots on goal, and he's 16th in the league for defensemen with shots on goals this season. So he's with the likes of, Roman Josi, Dougie Hamilton, Brent Burns, Dahlin, Cale Makar, Heiskanen, Trouba, Carlson, Darnell Nurse, Aaron Ekblad,
It's just
Shabbat,
our
Justin
power
Braun.
play is not very good. If it was better and he put
It
up
makes
like
sense. Yeah.
5 to 7 more points.
It would make sense. But I mean, he does bring something that they lack. Obviously, he has offense from the point. And they struggle offensively. So I see the point where, like, you might want to keep him because he does help in certain situations. He does help creating offense, but then also, does keeping him block a guy like York or some other younger guys. So there's the parallel. So that's why I think these comments are kind of interesting, because maybe the team is finally realizing, in a sense, like,
Well,
okay, if there's a market for him, let's move him and see what these younger guys can do, right?
I don't think he's blocking anybody. I think
Agreed.
I I think it's good to have these situations with veterans. I don't want York to be the number one power play guy immediately at 21 when we're not that
Competition is
good.
good.
Well,
Competition is good.
look, if York was clear cut ready, fine. I'm like,
He
guys,
isn't
he's
though.
driving.
He's
it-
not tearing it up
exactly.
offensively or on the power play,
The
right?
the
So
only guy right now that I can say as of late is flourishing like offensively from a young guy perspective is Frost. And I don't mean production wise, but just the way he's carrying the puck, the move, the things that he's trying.
I'd say
He
him
is
and Tippett. Yeah,
Tippett. I guess I kind of already saw Tippett as an elevated player. Like
I hear you.
he
Yeah,
kind of already hit another level for me. That's a great point, but like in my mind, I was kind of separating Tippett there because I'm
I
like,
agree. Kind of same. I feel like we've seen enough from him this season that he's like a bona fide 20 goal guy at this point.
yeah. I was like, I'm trying to think of like play driving though.
Yeah,
And like that's what York would need to do. And
which he
like
was doing earlier, but he's had a bit of a dry spell. But he's also playing first pair minutes in essentially his first full
so
year, so it's tough, right?
that's my point when you're saying like not that you obviously think this like heavily, that D'Angelo's or that you specifically think this that D'Angelo is holding back York, but it's like he's playing more minutes. It's like Like we can't
Yeah.
use York now 25 minutes a night and Provorov 25 and then just not use guys. Like I noticed that everybody's like turning on Sandheim all of a sudden. But
I don't know. I
last year you
don't.
loved him. Now
I
I thought he was going to replace Provorov last year.
Personally, that Sandheim stuff's interesting to me because I thought the last three games since he's been paired back with Ristolainen, he's actually jumping up in the play quite more often,
Well, we
and
talked
it
about
makes
why.
yeah, exactly. We talked about it in the last episode, and it makes tons
Yeah.
of sense. He was holding back before because D'Angelo, when they were paired together, is the more offensively inclined guy. But
Yeah.
now that
And take
Risto's on that
risks.
pair, now that Risto's on that pair, Sandheim's like, okay, I can jump up again. So I think people are actually kind of a little bit mistaken on that. I think Sandheim, he's had some defensive miscues, but the team hasn't been perfect defensively. And I mean, in the last couple of games, other than the Seattle game, they're keeping teams to 1, 2 goals a night. So from a defensive perspective, I don't think they've been bad at all,
Yeah. Agreed.
which is crazy. But yeah,
Yeah, let's move on to our next topic. We didn't really talk. We probably should have talked about it before the game analysis, or at least alongside. But Ali Lichshell has been called up to the Philadelphia Flyers. Kiefer Bellows has been sent back down to the AHL. He already had an assist the other night in a 3-0 Lehigh Valley win. But Lichshell's up, and I gotta say, I do like him and especially because he's such a late round pick. But he does show some poise. I thought he showed a little bit of it tonight. I didn't look at his overall minutes played. I do expect him to get more playing time though now with the injuries, and I think the Flyers want to give him a serious look here. Otherwise, I don't think they would have sent Bellows down so quickly.
yeah, I think you're hit the nail right in the head, Yariv. Like they gave or Bellows a couple games there, and then they're just thinking, you know what, Lixell's point a game probably in the AHL. Let's see what he can kind of do. He's a bit older than some of the other younger guys, like a Forster and a Brink. Yeah, I believe he's 23. He's also played in a men's league in Sweden, so it makes sense why they want to kind of give him the first look. And they had him, they didn't start him out on the fourth line either, right? They had him with Hayes and Lawton for quite a bit, and there were some plays within the game where he's showing poise, showing his smarts in the offensive zone, and making some nice plays and just some nice reads offensively and kind of keeping plays alive. So I think he's kind of getting adjusted still. He's had a couple games already in the NHL. I think as we kind of see him maybe get 5-10 in a row here, we might see more of the offensive ability come out. But so far, like what I've seen from Lichell, I think there's definitely more to be untapped. And for Bellows, I didn't think he played bad or anything, but I just think the coaching staff doesn't seem to be in love with him and the fact that there isn't a lot of speed to his game. I think that's a bit of a factor. And you put a fourth line of Bellows, Brown, and Delorier together, and they're not this quickest of foot, and they can kind of get caught a bit. And we've seen them get caught the past couple games in their own end a bit. So I think that's a factor as to why they kind of brought Lichell up, because he's a little bit of a quicker skater than Bellows.
Yeah, I think he's also more creative. Um, I think Bellows is not I, somebody who like Allison has an advantage over Bellows because I think he just listened to Tortorella. He just keeps his game super simple now.
And he has a
And
motor to him too. So
yeah, but you can see he really does listen to Torts. He only keeps his game north to south. He doesn't make any crazy passes. He's not even interested in it. And that is what will get him to the NHL. That what will keep him there is his reputation, and then he can start getting more creative and taking more chances.
yeah.
And he's going to get there too. And I don't know if Bellows is going to get there, but I think we could see him again this year, especially
Yeah,
after some bodies move.
it's possible. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm going to move some of the order of our stuff because we had trade deadline stuff to talk about, but it feels like it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to move up. We kind of talked about it already, but Flyers D. Been
Yeah.
blocking shots. So you brought it up already that York and Provorov are blocking a lot of shots. I think you kind of labeled them here as like a bona fide number one pairing
Yeah.
potential.
Yeah. Just for what I've
Go
seen
ahead.
the last couple of games from both of them, right? They just are very calm. They're going up against all the other opposition's top lines, like
Yeah.
just the way they shut down McDavid. To basically no points, and really not too much. Or well, he gets one assist actually on the Kane goal, but basically McDavid only getting 1 point is like him essentially getting zero, because he's essentially getting like 3 points a game at this
Yeah.
rate. So
Insane,
for him
dude.
to only get
So
one,
good.
for him to only get
Okay.
one, and I mean York's still a young guy in the league. It's pretty impressive that the Provorov York pairing's meshing so well. I think York, it's overblown about the whole left side right side thing for him. I think he's been pretty effective on the right side as well. Obviously, he's a little hampered sometimes with the exits on his backhand, but I don't think it's really messed with his game too much. And I think it's I don't think you really have to get him back to the left side right away. I think it's a really overblown thing these days in the NHL where it has to be a left hand guy and a right hand guy together. Like we didn't really see that too often 15, even 10 years ago. I think it's something that's a bit overblown. Even Tortorella, he's not one that's super fond of it. AV, it had to be left hand, right hand, right? So I think we're going to see York Provorov together for I'd probably majority of the rest of the year, unless they really go on a bad streak or something along those lines. But they've been playing really well, and I think Provorov especially has just looked a lot better as of late, and he looks very smooth kind of coming up the ice in transition too. Like we kind of didn't see as much offensive spark from him earlier in the year, but I think it's been coming out a lot more with York, and he's just getting more settled in now that he's kind of playing with the same guy night in, night out consistently, whereas earlier in the season they were kind of shuffling him around with Risto,
Yeah.
D'Angelo, and all that. What do you think about those two's game, Yuri?
Yeah, I think it's getting better. I still like to see more offense out of Provorov. I think he has another gear offensively. I think this team has another gear offensively that they can be better offensively than they are. At not
We
especially at the
saw it
power
before the
play.
break. We saw it before the break. They were scoring a lot more goals. Now they kind of dried up a bit, right?
Yeah, but I think it's also like they don't drive to make offensive plays all the time, which is
Yeah.
fine. It makes sense a lot. But I'd like to see that. Like I like what Tortorella is doing, and I think people don't really understand. At least in my position, I agree with him. This is going to be a process. That's why, like, he's not sending you this message because he's like, "Oh, these guys are actually not that good. I just want you to hold on." I keep seeing that. Like, that's how he's translating the message. It's like, no, 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 no. Like, he's telling you he can get more out of this group. Not all of them, not all everybody will be here, but that almost never happens. And I think Provorov specifically, and we know York is still young, so obviously we expect that. Provorov being in his mid-20s now, I think we expect another gear from him too. So I like it. I like the potential. I like where it's going. I think there's still some adjustments that could be done on this D. I don't think you would disagree on that, but I think it's been good so far. I do think, the emergence of somebody like York, to me, I'm like, that's great. I still would like to see another like a veteran elite guy come in here when this team is ready, like a guy who's like in his late
I
30s that is good. Not his
yeah.
late 30s, I'm sorry, his early 30s that is good.
Yeah. Almost
Like a
like an Alice was supposed to be.
yeah, like or even like a Martinez, like even a guy
Yeah.
of that caliber, just like a guy who's just savvy, a McDonough. We're not
Martinez,
there
I
yet.
mean, that would be interesting. It's almost like that is kind of like something like a Niskanen type almost move, right?
Exact. Yeah, I'd love to see a guy like that added to replace what, like, you hope Justin Braun would have been in his prime, or like you said, Matt Niskanen would be. He's one of my favorite defensemen. Even prior to coming to the Flyers, I love him.
Oh yeah, I agree there for
I
sure.
yeah, we just need to find another guy like that eventually. But I don't think the Flyers are necessarily ready for that. It's not a huge problem right now. But I think there's more to go. I think there's another gear. I agree with you. I like the potential of what we're seeing. I really like the way that the team is building an attitude, a consistency in the way that they're annoying to play against. They are, even when they're tired, they're annoying. Even a game against the Kraken where the Kraken playing not a perfect game, but they played a damn good game. They were all over the Flyers. They dominated possession, yet the Flyers still came within a goal and a couple mistakes of tying the game on at the very
Yeah,
end.
and to be honest, they had some good chances the last minute, and I mean they could have potted one. They just couldn't elevate the puck past Grubauer. So it was a close game,
Look,
and they were right. They're right into the end in a lot of these games, man. And
this
that's
is where
something that's good, right? Like,
Well, this is where it's so hard for me to buy this whole it's 3, 4 year, just 10 year process. I'm like, I have no idea what these people are talking about. I'm like, give me a Sean Couturier, a Cam Atkinson on this team. Add me a Dylan Larkin instead of what's it called, a
Hayes
JVR or
or
even a
Hayes,
Hayes.
yeah, yeah.
But add me a guy who can like puck possession players. And I was like, and we can make something here. Like we can have a team that, okay, I can't predict you that they're going to be the best team in the league and they're going
No,
to
but
definitely go to the Stanley Cup, but they can be in a conversation
yeah, they
to be
can be competitive.
upset.
They can be very competitive, and I mean, I think too when you have
That's how you
like,
start.
well, yeah, that's how you obviously start. But I think just with what they're doing now with their identity being hard to play against, then you have the goalie like Hart, and you add in a couple of those types of pieces, like they can be
An
very
elite
tough to beat.
goaltender.
Yeah, they can be very tough to beat in a 7-game series, and I think that's what kind of people aren't maybe noticing. And you know, I think just in this season in general, because we're kind of just on the topic now, just talking about how the team's trending up in general. Like, it is a good thing that the team is in these close games, that they're bouncing back. Like Tortorella, you put a letter out, to the fan base and the season ticket holders this past week here, and he said, it's been impressive to him that a lot of the kids are taking heavier minutes, big responsibilities, they're growing into impact guys, and development of the young guys is crucial, and that's what we're really seeing this season. And also, he mentioned that the team's responding to the challenges that they're facing, right, as individuals, as a group, and they're not backing away from these challenges. Like, they're in tough situations in games, and they're responding to them, and that's ultimately the process and the steps you need to build a
Yeah.
winning culture, winning identity. So, like, that can't be ignored here. Even though people hate the fact that they're getting these OT points, and they're scratching out some of these wins, and it's killing their draft position. A lot of these guys are going to be a part of the future here, so you need them to kind of be taking these steps forward for it all to kind of go together, right? So
Yeah, and it adds more into what we're saying. I do want to transition into trade deadline talk, but you have some stats here about Hart, and I think you should read them out loud because they are pretty. So as we transition, I do want to say I want to re-say what you just said. It's such an important comment. With a guy like Hart and a good team around him, you can upset great teams. You
yeah.
can beat great teams. If you have a great goalie, you can be a
I'm
great
just
team.
thinking, I mean, those New York Islanders teams in the early, like between 2010 and 2013, they went to the finals against the Kings. They obviously did not win, but I just think like a Henrik Lundqvist, like look at those Rangers teams. Did they really have a bona fide, like, elite
No.
guy? They had
I
Dubinsky,
mean,
Callahan, Rick Nash. Like,
I
they had
mean,
some great, they
I
had
think
some
they had
real good
great
players,
players. Yeah.
but they
They had a
didn't have
full
that,
good
like,
team.
they didn't need to have Connor McDavid or like an
Right.
Austin Matthews level guy. And I think when you
St.
have,
Louis did it
yeah,
with
right.
Jordan
I
Binnington.
I think when you have an elite
Not like an
goaltender,
elite
like,
goalie either.
yeah, you have an elite goalie though, like a Hart, and you have like a team that is you good players, but their depth throughout the lineup. I think that's kind of what the Flyers are aiming for in the future here. You don't have to have like that. Okay, I need a top 10 elite guy in the league, but we have like a lot of really good players, a really good goalie, and that makes us hard to play against as a collective. And I think that's kind of what they're aiming for. But just for your point with the Hart is elite stuff and this just stats. He's shining right now. The Flyers are, Carter Hart's 3-1-3 in his last 7 starts, 1.83 goals against average, 936 save percentage, and 1 shutout. So, he's just proving even further as the season goes along that, he's keeping the team in these games. He's a lot of the reason as to why they're winning a lot of the games that they're in,
The
especially the
close
Oil Elite
ones,
game, the
he
close
helps us
one.
keep it close for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, people thought, oh, he's just on a hot streak to start the year. He's not going to be able to keep it up. Well, he's keeping it up, and he's raising, his stats throughout the season. He's almost at a 915, I believe, save percentage. He might get to 920 if he kind of keeps up this
Which is
play.
crazy. It's amazing
Yeah,
save percentage
with
considering this team
exactly, and just another
and the
one
way
to
they
mention.
started.
As of February 11th, he is 8th in the league for goals save above expected leaders. So he has a plus 19.2 goals save above expected in all situations. So so far this season, I mean, he saved by the models over 19 goals expected based on the quality of chances he's faced throughout the season, which makes a lot of sense when you've seen the games. And he's in elite company, just with some of the best goalies in the league. I'll just rattle them off here for you. Ilya Sorokin, number 1, with goals saved above expected. Saros, 2nd. Linus Ullmark, 3rd. Jake Oettinger, 4th. Connor Hellebuyck, 5th. Vasilevsky, 6th. Shesterkin, 7th. And Carter Hart is 8th there. So a bunch of elite guys, and
And
he's amongst them.
that
And you can't
that's where I
argue.
see it. That's where I see him. I don't think he's exceeded those names. There's some names on there that have exceeded him as far as
But
reputation so
he's in
far.
the conversation. He could outplay them on any given night as they could to him, right?
I would argue that of those goalies, it's the worst team on there is the Flyers.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All those teams are in the playoff mix, right? Like,
Yeah,
Islanders, Boston, Dallas, Winnipeg, Tampa, and the Rangers, the top 7 teams and the top 7 goalies there, they're all in the playoffs. And the
Ex-
Flyers are not.
That just
So
shows how good Carter Hart is.
yeah, exactly.
He is that good in my opinion, and he's something to build on. And let's transition to trade deadline because this is probably the biggest segment here we have in the end. It's going to be an interesting trade
It's a
deadline,
fun.
I think.
I'm excited for the trade deadline talk, man.
Yeah, you know why
Fun.
I think it's fun too because the Flyers are not in misery right now. I know people like love the idea of them being at the bottom of the league, but it is a painful process to watch that as your
Yeah,
team
yeah.
gets embarrassed on a nightly basis and you don't see young guys do well. It's really not this like glamorous thing that people think, and then you have an 18% chance to potentially get the guy you want, and it's like it sounds cool to some degree, and I'll accept losses here at the end to try to get there. I get that, but we can do that in a fun way here where we're like trading and hopefully trading a JVR who's having a very good season, and his
Yeah.
value is not at this point where we're playing him on the fourth line, just trying to get his, before we are talking about eating cap space. Now we're talking about, maybe getting a second. And I know Elliot Friedman kind of made a statement that, there's several suitors actually out there, good teams. He probably
Mhm.
will be one of the most coveted players available. We're going to probably eat half his cap, which is not going to be much. It's going to be like a million something against your
Yeah.
cap in the end because of the money remaining. So it's a
He's
really
very
cheap player.
attractive. He's very attractive. I feel like a lot of teams are going to be in on him for
Yeah,
sure.
and just to add, and then I'll transition it to you to comment. Sorry, Vasili. I look at the opportunity there to get a second. I believe that is absolutely within reach. What I
Mhm.
think would be really interesting, and I said this last time, is a condition around that second round pick that gets me a first round pick if you make it to the Stanley Cup Finals or maybe somewhere far. I mean, typically it's
Like
Stanley Cup
conference
Finals.
final potentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and some of the teams that are going to want this guy are going to be those teams. And I'm not saying that this is an end of the world thing, but if you all of a sudden turn a JVR at the end of the year into a late first round pick in a very cool draft in a year
Mhm.
where you don't even have a second, that's a pretty smart trade.
Yeah.
If you're Chuck Fletcher, so Fletcher has an opportunity here. And I think with more than just JVR, but I do think that there's a nice opportunity here for JVR to get a really nice asset that we are going to need.
Yeah, obviously JVR is the main piece, and I mean, just to make sure everybody's aware here, he's got 9 goals, 13 assists, 22 points in 35 games this season, and that's not too shabby. About 0.75 almost per game, which is pretty
Pretty good.
solid. And he's playing about 16 time on ice per average per night, so he's playing well. He's playing in almost, I'd argue like the since
He's
he's
going to
gone
be a
back from his
third
in
line winger, you think, for a
yeah,
team?
most likely third line, potentially fill in the second line for maybe top power
Power
play.
play.
Yeah, top power play usage. So like he's an asset that teams are going to want to go for, and also I think it's just the veteran presence and just the fact that he's been around. Like been in
He has
multiple.
that
He's been in multiple play.
underratedly.
Yeah, he's a great veteran, great leader, but he's been in multiple playoff situations, right? Like multiple second he's gone to second rounds with the Flyers. He's gone to a cup final before. Like he's been on some runs. He's been to the playoffs with the Leafs in the past. Obviously, he has not gotten past the first round in those situations, but he has experience, and I think when you look at the top tier guys that are really available, like a Tarasenko gets traded. Some of these guys are coming off the board now. Like JVR is going to be a good consolation prize for a lot of teams that might miss out. And I think they're going to really be able to drum up some interest for him. Like you were saying, right? Like a second round pick obviously is probably
I
the
think
most
I think a second round
realistic.
pick and a potential like B prospect, a guy who could
Yeah.
play for the Phantoms.
Because I really think they could get into a bit of a bidding war with him because there's going to be a lot of teams that
Because he's having a
are
good
just
season.
yeah, he's having a really good season. Like we are saying, right, almost a 0.75 per game. And he's doing all the things that you want playing on that line with Tippett and Frost, showing that like he can
Yep.
still contribute, but also help out the younger guys as well. So there's just a lot there, for the Flyers to really, I think, take advantage of with JVR, right? So Elliot Friedman said the Wild specifically have interest. He mentioned this in his latest 32 Thoughts column. So that I think would be an interesting fit for sure. He's had ties to Minnesota in the past. I believe his wife is from there, and they also own
Oh, nice.
property in
I didn't know that.
Minnesota. So who knows? If they're talking to JVR, maybe they have preference. I know, he doesn't have a no trade or no move or anything like that. But I'm sure they try to do right by players, so that could be a possibility if Minnesota's giving a good offer. offer. Obviously, I mean, we talked about New Jersey in the past. He's from there as well. I could see that. Even the Leafs were being mentioned as well as a team that, he could potentially go back to. Boston. I'm sure Edmonton as well was a team that potentially was rumored too. So there's just a lot of teams that are going to be interested, I think. I wouldn't be surprised if there's just even some surprise teams we're not aware of. Even like a team like a Nashville who does always need some scoring punch. They're right there on the playoff bubble too, so you never
Right.
know. So I think the Flyers, like, they should be able to take advantage here and drum some interest up because there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be looking for a guy that can play in your top six, play top power play, can contribute for you in a playoff role, has been there before. So second round pick, I think that conditional first potentially. I was mentioning last week that or the week prior when I was on, a potential 2024 first rounder might be a return as well. So maybe they could go that route. I'd be interested. I know the 2023 first will be tough, but 2024, hopefully they could explore that. I think JVR should be something they get a good return back for, right? Like if it's less than a second round in 2023 or a B prospect or even a first round in 2024, I think that's a failure on Fletcher's end. Like you should do probably around that for him.
And that's why I worry about like waiting till the last second type of thing. I'm kind of like, all right, let's don't wait. I mean, he has some time here.
He does. March 3rd is the deadline, I believe. So
Right. So obviously he's gonna wait a little bit till maybe not, but like the Tarasenko trade wasn't amazing for St. Louis, but it's better than falling behind and not
mhm.
getting even close to what you want. They got their conditional first round pick there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like a team's gonna want the guy a little bit earlier, because the trade deadline's pretty late nowadays.
Yeah, you want to integrate the guy into your team, right, as early as you can, because there can be, speed bumps in the road there. We've seen in the
And he's
past, right,
healthy.
guys. Yeah, we've seen in the past though where guys get acquired and sometimes they're not always the perfect fit in a circumstance. So I think the more time probably benefits teams. It probably is what they're looking for. And
Yeah.
maybe also too, like, you trade a guy a couple weeks early, you could get a little bit of increased value because you're getting him for a little bit longer, right, as the rental. So
Yeah. That's all I'm saying is that I just don't want to see like I didn't hate the Wayne Simmons trade, and Simmons didn't have a great year, obviously the year we traded him, but JVR's got some value here. We know what the assets we really need. We're not chasing really a playoff spot this year. Even if we kind of are, we don't want to do it by, having the vets carry us there. We're
yeah.
not in a clear opportunity for that. And even on our best nights, we're still a team that, struggles to score above 4 goals a night for sure. 3 goals a night is like great for us. So yeah, so obviously that's one player that we know could be available. And then Kevin Hayes' name has been thrown around there.
Yeah.
Obviously he's having a great year offensively. He's not playing center here, which is what concerns me personally. Is that I need a center, and at that money, I need a center. So I don't
Yeah.
know if the Flyers are jumping to trade him. So I do see this whole like proposal the Flyers eat a bunch of cap. I'll be honest, I think if that's what's being offered, I don't see the Flyers making that trade at all.
Mhm.
I don't think there's any reason. He is a point per game player. There's no reason to move a big, strong guy who can produce offensively, who's liked in your locker room, not at a loss. There is, however, if a team wants to take on a big, strong player who will produce for them, and they believe that that guy can be an asset for them for 3 years, then there's a conversation to be had there. Maybe that's more of an off-season trade,
Yeah, exactly.
regular than a trade deadline thing. But I could see it being drummed up, and I wouldn't be shocked. I don't think it's that crazy that he would be traded, especially because you're still going to get him in his prime.
But he's also a valuable player still. He's not a bad player. It's not
Right.
like he's terrible or anything.
That's why
So
this whole thing about like eating cap, like I understand why people propose it, but how does that put the Flyers in a better position? Why? Because they
yeah.
free up some cap space to do what? To get an average player? Like I don't.
Essentially, I think this is basically what's been reported. So Hayes, just to kind of state too, right? Because he's having a career year, and since the All Star break, he's got 17 points and or since his return from the All Star break, 17 points in his last 17 games, 7 goals in his last 10 games. So he's been really good. So obviously for the Flyers, like he's kind of been the offensive catalyst lately. So I could see why they also would not want to move him,
Hmm.
because I mean he could be a piece and he could be somebody that helps them next season when they get a little bit healthier, right? So I could see a situation where they might not want to, but I do see a situation where it makes sense for them to move on from him to kind of free up a bit of cap. The report is from the fourth period and Anthony DeMarco, so shout out to him there. But essentially, what is being reported is that there's been league executives that have, stated there's interest in Hayes as long as the Flyers retained about 2 to 3 million of his salary. So I think he is making 7.14 million. So I'd place him. Let's say they retain 2 million, about 5.14 cap hit. If they did have to retain 2 million and you trade him, I mean, you got to at least get a couple second round picks, maybe even a first round pick back for him, a guy, because he's almost a point a game, right? If you're trading him for nothing or pennies on the dollar, I think the Flyers should, step out of that trade, because why would you trade a guy that's one of your best players, point a
And
game,
and you're
and it is a leader and beloved in the locker room,
and one of your
just for nothing? So
well, and also that one of your biggest problems as a team, and I'm sorry, I don't think the Flyers are going into this next year like they're going to be bad. Uh, you're moving a guy who's helping your offense produce,
and
and
they
they're
don't have a
not.
great offense.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's like I just don't see the win there in that type of trade. I'm not saying that trading him is out of the question. I've been talking about it before, everybody. By the way,
depends what you get.
I've been talking
Yeah.
about it for 2 years, to be honest with you. So I'm all about it, but not like that. That's
Not if
embarrassing.
it's for nothing, right? Like if you get good assets back, let's say you get some interesting young players, or potentially like let's say you traded JVR and got a second round pick for him, then you get another second round pick for Hayes in 2023. But I do agree with you, Reeve. I don't think this is going to be a move that's going to be made at the deadline. I just think there's too much salary attached and too many things at play. So if it happens, it's probably going to be a summer type move. And I think something that's we have as a topic here as well that was reported by the fourth period, is kind of attached to this in a sense,
Okay.
is the Flyers are interested in Dylan Larkin. So I think this is kind of a move that would
Sure.
supersede that, where like you got to move a Hayes out to free up the money to get a Larkin. And it's been reported by not just the fourth period, but also Pierre LeBrun, Darren Dreger, that Larkin's looking for about
It
9 million a year for
Sorry.
AAV. So he's going to be expensive, right?
No, no, I think it's a great point, a great segue. I think, look, if that is the case and you know that Dylan Larkin is available and you want to bring him over, sure. Then
I
I,
think
you know,
that it has to be a succession plan in place, though.
yeah, okay. I'm much more open to that. But until something like that is really available, it's really hard to plan that into a trade to take on, to lose a player, to take on extra cap space for what, 3 more years or something like that. It's like, I
Yeah.
guess. And if you don't get that guy and you only ended up with the 5 million in cap space and the guys you have
You
available
subtracted free bear offense.
are
So
essentially
so
Kevin Hayes caliber players, it's like, okay,
lose, basically.
yeah,
It's
you're
it's
better off waiting. That's all
I
I'm
think
saying.
it's a lot. I think the move for the Hayes specifically, it kind of ties into this. Like, depends on what they can do in the summer, trade wise, move wise. Like, if you're gonna move on from a guy like Hayes, you got to be able to bring somebody in that not just replaces him in my eyes, but probably is even more of a contributor than him, which in this case would be Larkin. But there's also no guarantee that's going to happen, right? I mean, Larkin's only going to be 27 next season. In the report from the fourth period, you know, they state that there's a lot of chatter around that the Flyers could look to go shopping in free agency, and there is a lot of interest for a guy like Larkin, which why wouldn't there be? He's one of the top young up and coming centers in the league. Great speed. Would be a guy that if you pair with Couturier down the middle and Noah Cates, I mean, you're looking pretty good down the middle. Couturier can come back healthy, right? That's a
Yeah.
great top three. Also, though, we got to be wary here, right? Like the belief is the Red Wings and Larkin, they're still talking, but they're still not close to an agreement. And we saw in the past in a situation like this where Yzerman had something
Probably
similar.
and he gets the deal
Similar,
done.
yeah, right. You had something similar with Stamkos in Tampa Bay where it goes onto the wire and he gets the deal done. So like, I wouldn't put it above Yzerman to get this one finished. I'm not sold that Larkin's going to be a guy that gets to free agency because Detroit's in a similar situation that the Flyers are. They want to take the next step. How does letting Larkin go help them do that? It doesn't really.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised to see him get the free agency. But if they do, I mean, the Flyers should be all in on him because what is their weakness? Centers. So if they have to move Kevin Hayes to get a top line center in Larkin, and then you have Couturier come back and you have a 1-2 punch of those two, I mean, that's an awesome move for the Flyers to make. It's something they should be looking into. Am I convinced that it's like the reality and something close that could potentially happen? Not even close. I'm not too sure that it's something they'll be able to pull off, but I think every team in the league would have interest in Dylan Larkin if he makes it to free agency.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough sledding. Like, what do you think of the rumor? What do you think of this whole Hayes kind of being tied into the situation?
I think there is a chance that Larkin makes it to free agency, but it'll be the opportunity to trade for his probably rights prior.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening just because it's Yzerman and the guy has his shit together. So I can't see him just losing to Dylan Larkin. If he is available, he is exactly the type of player that I would go for. He is a 26-year-old. He is entering his prime. He's pretty much always has been a point per game player for the past several years. And I expect him to be able to make a jump again. And even if he doesn't, he's still a point per game player. And he plays a key position. He's got a lot of speed. He's got a lot of goal scoring ability, playmaking. He's kind of has it all,
power play,
and leadership ability. So,
he's a captain in Detroit right now.
Yeah, I think he's like a better version of Frost in a lot of ways.
Honestly, that's a really good comparison just in terms of like the speed.
Yeah, he's bigger, stronger, faster, bigger, version of Frost. And yeah, I mean, that's where I kind of see it. I don't anticipate it. I don't think any of these kind of top guys really make it to free agency at this age. So yeah, I don't expect it to happen. If that's the case, I expect them to be traded probably for a high value asset from another team. Yeah, I don't see it happening. I do love the idea of it.
Interesting situation for sure. Yeah.
It makes more sense than picking up Johnny Gaudreau at 30.
100%. Yeah. This honestly getting a Larkin just about to hit 27. It kind of lines up almost perfectly just with the age group of this Flyers team. Like you have a Provorov who's about to be 27, a Sanheim, a Konechny's turning
Larkin,
26.
TK,
yeah, it really adds
Risto,
in.
Provorov, Sanheim. Oh, sorry, you said Sanheim, York.
Yeah,
they're all around that age. Hard.
Which so makes sense, but I just don't know if the Red Wings will let him go because they're kind of in a similar situation where they got a lot of young and upcoming guys that are also the same age. So
yeah.
It's very similar outlooks are honestly where the Red Wings are and the Flyers are. So
yeah, and I think it depends how the Flyers end up in this draft, who they end up drafting, what they see in the future, what Cutter Gauthier situation is.
Yeah, I mean honestly, that's true because there's no guarantee of what's going to happen in the draft, and there's no guarantee of the Flyers moving up or anything, but they are still in a position where they're in that lottery for the number one pick. They could win. Like, obviously it's not likely, but they could win. And if they do win, that changes kind of everything, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
You never know what's going to happen, really.
So I guess just to bring it home here, I'm going to move this topic up because I had it below this one. But Sean Couturier, what happens if he plays this year?
What happens? I think it's a great thing for the team in general.
How does the team handle it? Where does he play?
I mean, they're going to probably try to work him back a little bit slower. I imagine they're not going to be playing him, 20 minutes a night like he's accustomed to. They're probably going to get him in around 15 minutes to start off, 14, 15 minutes. Obviously, PK, power play. It's been terrible, so why would you not play him there? I mean, personally, I think they're going to, if he plays, I think they're going to slot him in probably with Konechny to start off because they've obviously, had chemistry in the past. I personally would like to see him with Tippett. I've been kind of yelling for that since, before we knew of this, double back surgery coming back to haunt us here. I kind of wanted to see them together just because I thought it was interesting. Couturier's puck possession type game where he kind of keeps it all in the other end of the ice and keeps the other teams hemmed in. And usually the Flyers possess the puck when he's on the ice, and Tippett, being very quick. And you being a guy that can really carry the puck up ice, I think it'd be just a great duo to have together. So I'd love to see them play together. And personally, I think it's a great thing for the Flyers because they can't go another season and not knowing if Couturier is a question mark, right? They cannot go into this offseason and not be sure of him being able to play and be healthy. I think that just is too much cloudiness from a center perspective. They're already like, who knows what's going to happen with them at that center position. They need to have some stability there, and you cannot go into the offseason without him playing a game, in my opinion. So I think
Yeah.
him coming back is a very important thing for just the outlook in general of the team moving ahead.
Yeah, I could see the coaching staff being tempted to play him 20 minutes a night immediately.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
for
I do.
Torts, of course.
Yeah, well, we'll see where as far as where he plays. I expect third line center to start. Well, probably work him back in slowly if he can play this year. Um, I don't know. Like it's weird to think about who he would play with because it's like depends how he performs, right? If he was
Yeah,
looking pretty good, it's like why wouldn't you put him with Tippett?
yeah.
Why wouldn't you put him with TK?
I want to see him with just I think the best offensive contributors. Obviously, just help him get his confidence back, right? Because like he hasn't played in 15 months. Obviously, he probably still knows himself. He has the talent, he has the skill, but like when you haven't been on the ice for that long as a player, it's something in the back of his head. I'm sure that he's just thinking about like how am I going to be when I get back? How's it all going to like come together for me, right? So I think when you put a
Somehow
when
I
you
don't think somehow like I don't worry about Couturier. I know I probably should. I guess I've seen him play like on torn MCLs and shit. And
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
just the
like,
back's weird. The back's weird. He's already not the fleetest of foot, so I don't know how that's going to affect him all around. I'm interested to see how he looks out there.
yeah, no, I agree. I totally get where everybody's coming from, but it's like something in my gut just tells me like if he's playing,
He'll be
like
good. I kind of have that feeling as well.
I just feel like he's mentally really strong, like a lot stronger than
Yeah,
people
I
realize.
think too. We just at least since he's come into the league and kind of emerged as this like two-way defensive shutdown star, which he has been for the past handful of seasons, right? Like we've always just been accustomed to being there, being that solid guy you can rely on. So I think that's always in the back of our head as well, where we like, okay, it's Couture, like he's going to be giving us this, and this is what we can expect from him, and it doesn't
Now we
really
don't like
change.
really know, yeah.
Yeah, now we don't really know, but I mean, I don't think it's so off to think that he can come back and be just as effective defensively. I think it's just his offensive game I'm kind of hesitant on because, like I said, he's always hasn't been the fleetest of foot. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to know how the back surgery affects that. But also, he's such a smart guy out there on the ice where I think he's going to be able to adjust, and there's probably going to be some adjustments there. But I think his smarts he'll be able to keep up. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a good assessment. All right, let's move into our Phantoms update and we'll wrap up from there. So we do have that Linus Hogberg's contract was terminated. He's sent back to Sweden. So that opens up a contract spot for the Flyers. On
48
top,
now. Yeah.
yeah, 48 spots. And well, I think that leaves the Cutter Gauthier question. I think there's a good chance that he does sign with the Flyers and comes over and plays at the end of the year. Jamie has already kind of guaranteed it. I think it's a little strong, but I could definitely see it, and I can definitely see the Flyers wanting to fit him in on the roster and give him a chance here at the end of the year. Get him used to Tortorella early because Tortorella will be coach here. Even if Cutter Gauthier doesn't play here next year, he will most likely be the coach here the following year. So good to introduce him to Torts. I mean, I'm sure they met a little bit already, potentially, right, during training camp and whatnot, but Torts wasn't really that involved in the organization at that point. Not like it is now. So I think it'd be really cool. And I do think Cutter Gauthier would probably be effective in the NHL, in a sample size here at the end of the season. I think we could get a good taste of him. We saw a little bit of Brink, what he could bring, and Brink continues to put up points in the AHL. Forrester continues to score. Elliot Denoyer has caught Forrester in goals. He continues to put up points. And the Phantoms are winning. They have a winning record. They're in a playoff position right now. I expect them to continue. Ersan is still playing really well. They just won 3-0. I think they won 3 or 4.
They won 3-0. Yeah, they won. I think
They won 3 of the
four of the
last 4.
Yeah, 3 of the last 4. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And the Phantoms have been doing really well lately. And just for the Gauthier talk, I mean, he has as well, right? He has a killer goal in the Bean Pot where he literally, it's like nasty. Like he's no looking in the dot, and he like no look and shoots it and rips it top shelf. And you're like,
Did
are you
see that?
kidding me? So crazy goal. And in general, he's
He's
been
just a
having a
hell of a
great.
shooter. He's a hell
Yeah,
of a
man,
shooter.
he's really like that Jeff Carter comparison. The more I see him
Pretty
shoot,
good. Is a
it's a
pretty good comparison.
pretty smart comparison. And
He's bigger than Carter too.
yeah, he's a big boy, man, and he can move for his size. And 14 goals, 11 assists on the season in his freshman year in 23 games, 1.08 points per game. So he's playing really, really well in the NCAA right now, and I think just the 48 contracts thing and terminating Hoberg, it does really point to him probably getting signed. And also the Flyers potentially just making a move in general, or them being open to potentially adding or potentially, making some sort of hockey
Well,
trade, because they have two open slots, so you never know what
and
they're going to do and kind of assess here.
well,
So,
that's kind of what I was saying about the JVR trade. Like, it's assumed that we'll get a pick back, but we might get a player as well, and it could be like
yeah.
a fourth line player, but it could be a younger fourth line player. Like similar
Yeah,
to
you have
Ryan
some
Hartman.
flexibility now with the two open roster spots to add a little bit to your
Exactly,
roster.
because
So,
that team might be in a roster spot and they might need to shed a little bit of salary to take on JVR or whatever. Maybe they're not just adding JVR. Maybe they're
yeah.
adding JVR and a defenseman or something, right?
And
So
somebody else. Yeah.
yeah,
So I mean, that's I definitely agree there. You're like, I think he's gonna
could trade
probably come
JVR and
over.
Braun to the same team.
You never know. I think he's probably gonna come over and sign, and he'll probably get in at least like 15, 20 games, kind of similar to Brink last season. And then from there, right? Like I think
That
the
would be
Phantoms
awesome,
are,
by the way. That would be
yeah,
such a great way to end this year to
it
see Cutter
would
Gauthier and the Flyers.
some hopefulness, and especially too if you see him like show some poise and just show his skill, which I think he will show us.
Well, we could absolutely use what he brings on the power play.
Oh yeah, his shot, 100%.
We really need that.
100%. I'd love to see a setup with, you get him and Frost together and Tippett and kind of see what they can do. Or even if a Couturier comes back, how that would potentially look. That'd be great to try out. Um,
That would actually replace your JVR too. I mean, you
yeah.
probably wouldn't play Cutter Gauthier as center right to begin with, I
No, I
assume.
think he's going to come in as a winger, right?
Yeah, I'll start off as a left wing here and then eventually get
Yeah.
transitioned to center. Or maybe they will try him as a center and just shift Lawton over
Yeah, they might want to
just
get
because
him to
they can.
custom. I think it's a good thing to get him some games just because, he said himself
Make him fourth line center for a
he
bit.
wants
Who
to make the
cares?
full-time transition. When we interviewed him at the draft, he said his goal is to make the full-time transition and being an NHL player next season. I'd argue with the way he's performing in college that like he's on track to do that. Obviously, we have to see how he plays if he comes over here and signs. But I think the main thing is like he gets a cup of coffee. He kind of figures out, okay, this is what it takes to play against these defenders in the NHL. It's what it kind of takes to be at this level. And then he goes and has an offseason to train. And I think that's very helpful for a young guy.
It's huge. I think it's the
Yeah.
reason we I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's a big reason why I think Farabee is the way he is. He did not have a real
Yeah.
off season,
Yeah, exactly, right. So I think the
in my
training is a big
opinion.
thing. I agree 100% with the Farabee talk there. Right? Like I think this season, going for Farabee, this offseason is going to be huge for him just to get a full season of training and then come back and have a big season. But for
Look at Hart.
Gauthier,
Look what
yeah,
happened to Hart.
exactly. Exactly, man. But I think for Gauthier, it's the same type of deal, right? You get him a cup of coffee, and then from there, he can kind of know where he needs to adjust. And also, he's going to be playing in some meaningful games because there might be some teams in the last 20 that need these wins to get into the playoffs. So, like, it's not going to be hockey that's, for the week, right? It's going to be some high spirited games and intense games. So that's good for him to get accustomed to. And, playoffs for the Phantoms will be a big thing for him, too, because I would expect that if that does happen, he will go down and play for the Phantoms in the playoffs because they are on track to make the playoffs right now. So I would expect that to occur as well, and that would be a good experience too if they can go on a long playoff run with all those young guys down there. And just to kind of end off with just the Phantoms talk in general, I
Yeah.
want to bring up Bobby Brink because he has been killing it.
Yeah.
He had 2 assists the other night, and
Another one
he
in the three
yeah,
nothing win.
another one in the 3-0 win, yeah, last night. And Elliot Denoyer, 2 goals last night as well, and he's up to 17. But for Brink, 6 goals, and 8 assists, and in 15 games, he has 14 points since he's been back from his surgery, which is kind of crazy. He's showing that he has some
It was a
talent. Not that
serious hip surgery.
Yeah, man, and I mean, it just shows like the Flyers. They got some young guys coming that look like they're gonna have some offensive talent in Forster, Gauthier, and Brink. So you couple those guys into the future, plus whoever they're gonna pick in this upcoming draft, man, and like, they have some weapons, and I think they're gonna be making a difference probably sooner than later at this level. And I think they're doing it the right way, especially with guys like Forster, Denoyer. Giving them a full year in the AHL, where it's
Hmm.
shown that a year in that league can really help young talented offensive players, find themselves, find their game, and then translate to the NHL. Like, you look like a Braden Point. He spent a full year and a half in the AHL before he came up and played in Tampa Bay and really cemented himself in the NHL level. So I think, it's shown recipe for success for a lot of other teams. I think the Flyers are doing a good job with developing those younger guys. And impressive for Denoyer, man. 17 goals, leading the team now in goals for the Phantoms. So I think there's a lot of offensive ability in his game that is underrated.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think Cutter Gauthier could also join the Phantoms or
Yeah,
play
that's what I was
for
saying.
him.
That's what I was saying, right? Like calling him up, it wouldn't just be getting to the NHL cup of coffee, but the Phantoms are poised to make the playoffs, so like he's going to get a chance to make a playoff run with the Phantoms. So
Yeah, and there's some other guys that maybe the Flyers would consider calling over at the end of the year. Obviously,
yeah,
Emil Andre is another guy who's on the brink of potentially
yeah, and he
coming over here.
looks he's having a great season as well in the top tier Swedish league. So
Yeah, and I would imagine they want to get him over here next year.
I could see it.
I can't see
Yeah,
them waiting much longer to try to get him over, especially with the chance they took here in Yinning, who's actually I think producing better than people anticipated.
yeah,
I think his game suits the North American game, and he might be a guy who gets a call up next
he
year
could be
and
an
surprise some
option.
people.
Could be an option. I think you know
He's just
what,
got
like
good size for a
there's a
guy
lot
his
of
size, good
people.
mobility.
I think just to end off here, like there's a lot of people saying, the team's kind of stagnating and forever in mediocrity, but I think just there's a
They're
lot of
ignoring the signs of
yeah,
positivity.
there's a lot of good signs just with the way the team's been trending and the young guys lately. Just the fact they're in all these close games, that's the first thing. But then also you look at the prospect pool and a lot of these young guys, like they've done a good job drafting. There's a lot of guys here that look like they're, there's going to be some talent. They're going to be contributors at the NHL level. And you could say, oh, they haven't done it at the NHL yet, so it's hard to know. But typically, if you are contributing decently at the AHL, it usually translates to the NHL. You
To
look like a
some
guy like
capacity, yeah.
yeah, well, but look like a guy like Owen Tippett, right? Like he's had almost 30 or close to 40 goal years in the AHL, and he's about a 20 goal guy at the NHL level. So like it translates over. So when you get production at the AHL level, it can translate. So I think for guys like Forster, Lixell, even Brink, Desnoyers, like it's a really good thing for them to be contributing at that level because they're getting ready to kind of do it at the NHL level. So I think people need to, you can't overlook that and the fact that those guys are eventually going to be in the wings and ready
And
to play, right?
and again, I think the trend is also really important. Like when we talk about Bobby Brink, like I think if Bobby Brink was healthy, he was playing all season in the AHL, he'd be probably the leading point scorer in the AHL, in my opinion. He would be
Yeah.
way above a point per game. It wouldn't be just around there. That's a guy who just came back from surgery. Like
Yep.
I think the key is what you're seeing this team trend to. The fact that Denoyer is getting better, the fact that Forrester is getting better,
You're
you
seeing
know?
positive progression for these younger guys,
Yeah.
whereas, in a lot of situations with some of the Flyers prospects, we weren't seeing that in the past. So I think they're doing a good job this
Isaac
season.
Ratcliffe, who's like
Yeah,
not even playing.
I think they're doing a good job this season of developing those key, prospects that they picked in the first, second round, at least in the AHL, this past
Yeah.
season. I think it's been definitely great. And LaPerriere, for a guy that, a lot of people weren't a fan of, he's doing a great job down there this season.
They're
So
starting to get it together. So it's a big year. It's a big year for the Phantoms. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Phantoms are in the playoffs and the Flyers are not, that even Cam York might go down there and play.
yeah, I think
He's still
that could benefit
eligible.
him. I think
He's
that could
still
benefit
eligible. It
him.
would definitely benefit him and it would benefit the Phantoms to add a guy like York, who's already been in
Yeah.
the NHL and successful.
He'd be their number one in all situations, man. So
Yeah, and then obviously you have Sam Ersan, who we know is a good enough to play in the NHL. So it could actually be a pretty interesting Phantoms playoffs
yeah,
as well.
I've even got to mention Airson too, with all the prospects just like trending up. Like he's one you can't even forget. So
You can't
he's
forget,
killing
can't
it.
deny.
He got his first shutout in the AHL just last
In
night. So
in previous seasons, he would be the Flyers' starting goaltender right now.
yeah,
But because Carter Hart is that damn good,
he's
he
not.
and it wasn't even a question. Like you saw Tortorella and they said, "Oh, is he like competing?" He's like, "No, Carter Hart's my guy." It's like
Yeah,
it's not really a question, guys. Like every coach has recognized this in Hart. It's not a coincidence.
no, definitely not.
All right, so let's wrap up there. Vasily, you got anything coming up? Anything you want to let the people know about?
I should have an article coming, this week. I'm going to get into some trade deadline talk. Potential deals for JVR. So keep an eye out for that one. And we're going to have a bunch of, trade deadline related stuff coming out for the site as well as we move along throughout the month and just content in general. So, keep with us and we're going to keep you informed about the Flyers, Phantoms, Royals, and essentially anything in the Philadelphia Flyers hockey bubble and affiliates there. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. Yeah, again, thank you, everybody. By the way, this is tobacco. This is strawberry. Oh no, this is watermelon. Just so anybody's wondering. Um, But yeah, thank you again, everybody, for listening. Really, really appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I mean, we see it in our numbers, and I'll tell you guys right now, everybody's seen numbers drop. We really have not. And that's awesome. And I don't mean like our numbers are higher than everybody else's, but you guys have been consistent and following and listening. And we're trying, we're going to do some new stuff. We're already talking about it in the background. You'll start seeing some changes, even with like logos and stuff. And then there's more to come. And we got Rebecca on the job, and we're like kind of in planning stages, so nothing's gonna really happen too much right now. But
Yeah.
we're gonna do some more interesting stuff going into next season. And did talk to Steve Cornianos. For those who are not aware, he's like impossible to get a hold of nowadays. But I still have a relationship with Steve. We're still cool. And we're gonna get him back on the podcast.
We're gonna do a big draft show, and like we're gonna probably be ramping
Probably
up
after
our
the
draft.
trade deadline.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna do a big draft show, and I mean, ramp up our draft coverage as general, kind of as we get to the end of the season, and hopefully we'll even be at the draft and covering for you guys, both of us, and getting gritty with the tag team there for the fans and the
Yeah,
Flyers, fans in general to kind of get the coverage out. So
absolutely. It's gonna be an awesome draft to watch, no matter where the Flyers are picking.
mhm.
Um, cool. Yeah. Again, thank you, everybody. We love you so much. Please like, share, subscribe, do the whole thing. It is amazing. Please check out the team store. Follow myself and Vasili. I am Wolok on Twitter, and Vasili, you are Flyer It Up.
Yes, correct.
Cool. Got it right. Yeah. So thank you again, everybody, for listening. We love you, and remember, always stay gritty.